Today on Project Stay Connected on ELN, we climb an altitude on Iron Mountain in Glenwood Springs, the location of Glenwood Caverns Adventure Park. Joining us is owner and visionary, Steve Beckley. Steve, thanks for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, I mean, I've been up here for a long time with you and seeing you as you got started, but I really want to ask you how you really got started.
Okay.
And that meaning, like, where did you grow up? What's your background? How did you become the pillar of this community?
I don't know if I'm a pillar of the community, but I certainly enjoy what I'm doing. I'm probably one of the few people in the world that actually really enjoys their job and looks forward to coming to work every day. So, you know, we're very fortunate. So, no, this has been a passion of mine for even much longer before I even owned the property. So.
Well, let's go back and see how that passion started.
Okay.
So where did you grow up? And
you know, my dad was with the government. He was an engineer for the Bureau of Reclamation, so we moved about every 3 to 4 years. So by the time I was 18, we lived in 6 or 7 different towns, and mostly in the West, California, Idaho, Colorado, Utah, Nevada. So we lived a lot of different places. I went to high school in Cortez, down in southwest Colorado. And then when I graduated, I went to Car School Mines, and I got an engineering degree there in petroleum engineering. And when I was at the school mines, that's when I read about this cave. You know, I was in a library, and there was a book in the library called Caves of Colorado. And it was actually, you know, this is probably 1982, and the book had been out of print since 1974. So, and it had said in the book about this spectacular cave in the top of Iron Mountain called Fairy Caves. And it actually said that it was going to be commercially developed because the cavers had found all this new passageway in the 60s, and I knew it hadn't been developed, and I was traveling all over the United States going to different caves and finding, you know, I really love caves more than anything.
so that was your sport, that was your hobby?
That
caving?
was, you know, we'd go to the Guadalupe Mountains down in New Mexico and do 300-foot rappels into big caves like Carlsbad and caves outside of Carlsbad Park. And so we were doing this on every spring break and every Christmas break and summer breaks. We would just travel the United States and go caving. And so it was a real passion of mine. And I always thought, what a great business to have a cave where you can show people your passion and maybe make a few bucks to support your family.
Were you always an entrepreneur? Did that come into your psyche after college, or was that before college, or were you
probably before college? You know, I was the kid that, you know, got my Eagle Scout by the time I was 13. I was top of my class, and so I was always driven to do something more. You know.
So you weren't a rotten teenager?
Oh, I was pretty rotten. Yeah, no. I didn't say that. I know I was definitely rotten, but I was always pushing to, you know, some business idea. You know, I looked at all sorts of different things, and you know, I had a job when I was actually for 4 summers. They were building a dam down in by Cortez, and I was worked for University of Colorado, their archaeology department, as basically just a grunt. But they were excavating about 2,000 Indian sites that were going to be flooded. So, so I was excavating big Indian ruins and for 4 summers, and that was great. I loved that work because it was outdoors, and it's kind of like getting paid to dig for treasure. And then went to school mines and decided petroleum was probably the easiest degree at school mines, and so maybe that was the only one I could pass. But during that time, I, you know, found in this book, The Caves of Colorado, I'd never caved before, and I read about caves, and the first cave was Falk Cave, which is right outside of Golden School Mines, and we went up there, and it was a little tiny growed hole, hardly even worth crawling into, and I crawled into it. It was dark, but I just got hooked and that's when I started going caving all over Colorado, and that's when I first called the owner for this cave and just asked him if I could get involved, or if he's ever going to sell the cave. And
well, let's talk about that, a little bit of that, the history of acquiring this cave, because I think it's important that people know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me about that, what you had to go through. You know, and you started down at the Hotel Colorado as your first office, and from there it
expanded into this. You know, so in 1982, when I was still in college, I actually called Glenwood and hired an attorney to track down who the landowner was. Because you just couldn't do that there was no internet or no Google searches or assessor websites you go to look things up. So and it was, the first guy I hired was a guy named Bob Cutter. I don't know if you remember, but he's a longtime local, been here forever. And I don't know if he even remembers, but I hired him, and he did the title search and looked up who the owner was, and it was Pete Prebble, and he actually lived in Denver. His home address was Denver, but he spent all his summers up here. And that's when I started calling him and trying to get involved. And he basically shunned me. He just said, I don't want to talk to you. And
well, what kind of guy was he?
He was kind of a reclusive. He wanted to commercialize the cave too. He was the second owner of the cave. The caves were discovered in the 1800s. He was in an exploratory trip in the late 59, 1960. He found 2 big rooms. There was only about 800 foot of known passageway. He found about another mile of cave and got real excited. And the first owner was Darrow, which is Clarence Darrow, it was C.W. Doyer.
He was a lawyer here in town.
C.W. Darrow, and he was the judge in town.
Oh, judge, okay.
He had 16 kids.
Oh.
And his cousin was Clarence Darrow, which was the Scopes monkey trial lawyer, and so very famous in those movies and stuff. And so he was the attorney, and they found the cave, and his 16 kids were the tour guides. And when the cave went out of business in probably 1915, somewhere in there, we don't really know when it went out of business. It basically sat empty, and so these cavers started exploring it, and they found these massive, big, beautiful rooms down below called the Barn in Kings Row, which is on our tour now. And that was in the book. And so he bought the cave, and 1960 all the way to when I started calling him, he'd been trying to open the cave, and he just hadn't had any luck. No money, it's a lot of work to open a cave.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's no way to get up here.
Exactly. And there's no power. There was a lot of things hurdles that he had to come up against, and he was getting older and getting tired, but he still didn't want to talk to me, and I kept calling him, and I went on and had an oil and gas career. I moved to New Orleans and worked for Amoco, and then worked for myself as an entrepreneur. I started my own little oil company.
Oh, you did?
And we would buy old stripper wells, and improve them, put in little water floods or fix them up, and so one time I had maybe a couple hundred wells and 25 employees and all in Kansas, and that's when I kept calling him, and finally, I think it was probably 1994 that he finally let me go in the cave, and I bugged him enough. He says, "Okay, you can go in the cave, but you have to fly this doctor up from Austin because he's the only guy that can guide you in. No one else knows how to get down there."
But at that time, remember, Jeanne was with you at that time.
Well, she kind of was, because that was one of our first dates. So Jeanne, my current wife, that was right when we first met, and I got this opportunity to go in the cave, and I asked her if she wanted to go, and she said sure, and she'd hardly had any. I took her in one cave before. That was our first date, and this was our second date, and it was a 3-hour belly crawl to get down to these bottom rooms, and she almost didn't make it, but we got her through it, and then we got to the bottom and we saw these beautiful big rooms. She was excited, and I told her that was my dream, my passion. I wanted to open this up to the public and show people how cool caves were and educate them on the environment underground.
Now, what was she doing at the time?
She was a software engineer, so she was in Denver working in software sales.
Independent woman. She didn't really need you.
She did not need me at all. Matter of fact, she was probably more successful than I was. So she was doing really well, and she was a software engineer, and then she went into sales and was doing really well, and so we kept dating and kept coming up here and bothering him, and we'd, actually, to be honest with you, his cabin was right where we're sitting. He had a little cabin right here, and it's actually our wild tour shack, which we moved to the other side of the property just to save it. And but he would sit in his cabin, and we bring him ice cream bars up here and have ice cream with him, and he'd let us go in the cave and explore. And the deal was, if we ever signed an agreement to lease or to buy the caves, that we'd pack up our stuff in Denver, move to Glenwood, and start the cave.
It happened.
And so I think it was August of 1998, he signed the agreement, and I came home and said, he signed it, let's get ready to move to Glenwood.
Wow.
And she was working, not only was she working, she was pregnant. So she was pregnant with her first child. So we were both gonna quit our jobs, sell our house. She's pregnant, we're gonna move to Glenwood and open the cave. And
wow.
I moved up here first and lived on Minter Avenue.
That's a perfect name.
And I lived I had hired a mining crew. There was 3 miners and myself, and we lived in this little apartment, and we'd come up every morning and drill and blast, because we were blasting a tunnel into the barn so we could open up the lower part of the cave.
Wow.
And Jeanne was still in Denver because we had to keep her working, so we had insurance. So she worked until our first son was born in February, and then continued to work. So she would come up here every weekend, drive up with our newborn son, and I worked all week, and then we'd spend times on the weekends, and then she finally moved here full time in the end of July. But we opened the caves. Our goal was to open by Memorial Day. We opened the caves.
Give us a quick history about from the driving up here to the first gondola to the.
Yeah, so we got the lease on the cave, lease with an option to buy in end of 1998. We put the tunnel in, and we broke through in the tunnel Christmas Eve of 1998, and so we got the tunnel in, and we started putting lights in and fixing the road up, and we worked all the way through the winter till Memorial Day, and even in May we were just extension, let's get it open, extension cords, put lights behind things. So we were just doing whatever it could to get it open, and we opened Memorial Day of 1999, and we thought that it was kind of funny. Jeanne was still in Denver, and we, back this was a long time ago. Back then we had a answering machine that could only hold 20 messages.
Right.
And right before we opened, Denver Post came out and said this new cave is opening, and the calls are coming in so quickly that she couldn't keep up with the voicemail. And so she was still working full time, trying to keep up with her voicemail, taking reservations.
Pregnant.
Well, actually, I think she was taking care of a newborn then.
Oh,
so he was born in
harder.
February.
Yeah.
So
tougher.
Yeah, and so the first day we opened, we had 500 people show up, and it was just crazy. We were so surprised, and it was just just took off from there. And I think our first year we did about 30,000 visitors just between Memorial Day and Labor Day, and we'd shut down in the wintertime. And
so was that the breaking point where you needed to go and say, we need a gondola, we need something else?
Well, so that was probably, year 2, so that was 1999. We put the gondola in 2000, or I'll call it a tram. Our first Pulse tram was 2003. So it was 99, 2000, 2001, and we started building the tram in 2002. So we went from 30,000 visitors to about 40,000 visitors in those years. And so, we borrowed a whole bunch of money, and some bank, actually Westar Bank, took a flyer on us, and
that's why they're not here in town anymore.
That's probably when bankrupt. No, they got bought out by I think they got bought out by U.S. Bank, but they decided to lend us the money, and we put the tram in this building, and opened up. I think we opened up right around Memorial Day of 2003, and that first year we did about 100,000 visitors, so it about tripled our visitation, and it was. But we knew the first day that we were in trouble, because our cave was too small, and we had all these people coming up. And
that brings me to my next question.
And we could not get the people in the cave fast enough. There were 3-hour waits to do cave tours, and that was our only attraction.
So then the light bulb went off and said, wait, all these people are just hanging out up here.
Yeah, and our restaurant wasn't that good. So we said we needed something else, and that's when we started putting in attractions. And I think our first year or second year, maybe we put our like just a climbing wall in and a sluice box,
Right.
But
I
then in
remember that.
2005 we put in the Alpine Coaster, and
Right.
that was a first that never been done. We read about it it was in Europe, but I talked to the guys in Germany, and they didn't want to bring it to the United States because of his story was he kept remembering the McDonald's coffee story where, someone spills coffee,
Coffee, then
gets
you
sued. It's like, I'm not bringing my coaster to the United States. You guys are too litigious, and I don't want anything to do with you guys. So I flew over to Germany and met with him and toured all of his coasters and finally convinced him that we weren't such an awful culture, that he could be protected with liability waivers and different things. And so he came over and sent a crew over. We built the first Alpine coaster in the United States during the winter of 2004, and we opened it Memorial Day of 2005.
And that's an incredibly different industry all of a sudden,
Yes.
to mix these industries.
Yeah.
But how did you get involved in thinking about what attractions and where to go for these? Did you know somebody?
No. At that time we were just kind of winging it. I think get the internet and stuff. But what we had to do is, a true coaster made by, Mack or B&M. Those are $20-25 million coasters. You just can't. I couldn't afford those. So we had to look for things that were unique, that no one else had, and kind of fit our theme. And so the Alpine coaster that's what made me, I thought that was when I got on the internet and searched for that, that's what I really liked, and so that's what we pursued that one. And I don't know if you remember, we also, in that same year, we put in 2 other attractions, the original swing over the cliff, and then we had the original zip line, and those were from, I did really good on one ride, and I did really poorly on the other 2, because those are rides that were developed by a guy that he was kind of a one-off. He developed rides, one at a time, and didn't have a great reputation, and those rides, failed. Not failed, but in other words, we had to tear them out after 2 or 3 years and replace them.
It's trial and error. I mean,
that's how
you
made
do it, huh?
Yep. So interesting enough, that A-frame that was the original swing, after I think we put that in 2005, probably stopped using it in 2007.
Well, I remember that because you'd have to get the rope
Yeah.
and hook it up, and then it was like it was a swing. There were
Yeah.
no hydraulics. It
No.
was like you just let her go.
Yeah. And then the worst thing about it was it's swinging, and it took a long time to stop. So we had
That's right.
we had this hook that the operator had to grab it and pull him towards the cliff, and it was really awful. It was
Part of the adventure.
Yeah, well, it was a huge liability, and when we started really realizing that we were really, probably not, it wasn't probably the smartest ride to have, that we pulled it out and put the new swing in, which has been
that's
super
incredible.
successful. Anytime it gets put on YouTube, it gets millions of hits.
Right.
It's really
From all over the world.
From all
people
over the
are-
world.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's always rated as one of the top
It's
rides.
pretty cool.
And but again, we took a simple ride, made it unique, made it different. That swing, you can find that swing at any number of amusement parks, but not on a 1,500 foot cliff.
Yeah.
So
So then now we're up to the point where you have a high-speed gondola.
no, not yet. So
Wait.
we still have just the tram, which only does about 250 people per hour, and
But it's detachable.
it's not detachable. It's a fixed grip.
Right now?
No. Well, I'm not even here yet. So that's.
You're not here yet. Okay, we're not current
No.
yet. You're still building up.
I'm still building. Be patient, Chris. Jeez. So we kept building attractions, and our numbers kept going up. So once we got to about 250,000 visitors, I guess, or 225,000. We just couldn't. We were bussing people up. It was just too many people. So that's when we put in the high-speed lift,
Right.
and we opened that a couple years ago. So 2018, I guess.
Been 2 years already?
Yeah. Yep. And is that right? I think 2018.
Which is pretty cool. It's safer, it's faster, it's all those things.
Yes. Better in the weather. It's not as impacted by wind. It's not impacted by lightning. Instead of 250 people an hour, it does 1,000 people an hour. It's we have concerts up here. Now people don't leave early because the big line to get down. I mean, it just takes those people off the mountain. It's just it's a dream to have this machine, and it's just technology has come so far in the, I guess it's been 17 years since we put the first one in.
Wow.
And now we have this super, one of the highest, the best lifts in the United States. It's one of the newest ones. It's really a great lift, and it's really changing our environment. I mean, until this year, of course,
Well, I mean, and when you say changing the environment, it's changed Glenwood in such a positive way. Yeah. It's become a destination area. We've always had the pool, but once you're done with the pool, and now there's so many things to do besides just the recreational things. Yeah. But this has been such a great addition to Glenwood to make it a destination place, and not just a drive-through place. And it's been so awesome for everyone, everyone involved. And
my intent was never to do that. My intent was just to have fun, and so I got a great group of people around me, managers, employees, and it's just about making just a really cool place that you'd love to take your own family and really enjoy.
Right,
the
and
mountains.
I feel that from the top down. I mean, you're having fun, and so everybody that worked for you and worked for the caverns and the Iron Mountain Hot Springs all have an incredible attitude, you feel good, and you know why. It starts from the top down. It just does.
Well, thank you. But I have a bunch of good managers that live and walk and talk the talk. I mean, really. The managers really give the lifeblood, and that's what I tell our employees is, we can build the most amazing rides in the world, but if it doesn't have a personality behind it, we've got 12 attractions that have about 2,500 people an hour capacity, so we have a lot of ride capacity. So our goal is to never have long lines. Now, sometimes we do get a long line on the Alpine Coaster or the zip ride, but in general, we really try to limit, I went to Disney one time, and it was, I got 4 rides in all day. A long wait. Yes, they theme the waits and stuff, but our intent here was to, spend more time with your family and more rides. So, you can come up and spend all day here and have multiple rides.
Well, for adventure meets nature meets adventure.
Yeah.
I mean, because you can just walk around here and feel good.
Yeah, absolutely.
And be patient.
Yeah.
It's the thrill of the ride, but the patience of being outside and just relaxing,
watching the eagles and the birds soar, and randomly seeing a bear run through the park. That happens every once in a while. We're in the middle of nature right here. Yep.
Right. We're in some tough times, and I know there's some challenges ahead, and I know that you're going through now figuring out how to open up and all these things. Yep. What can people expect coming up here in the near future?
I think it's still going to be a very good product. We've got all of our staff working. We've been closed down almost 3 months, but we've kept the staff all the way through, and they've been painting and cleaning and devising. And actually, we've had tons and tons of, Zoom meetings and safe meetings that talking about how we're going to reopen and how we're going to, so we're designing things like. Queuing lines for the rides that are more on, like on an app where you can actually.
So you
don't have to wait in line. We'll text you when it's your turn.
Oh, wow.
So and we're going to limit the capacity that's on the mountain. We're going to cut it by at least 50%. So it's going to be a lot more easy to get around, and so we're going to have to live with some of those cuts, but that's okay. It still can make. We're not going to make any money this year, but we will keep our staff on, and we will be able to go to the next year and be ready for when. But some of these things, like the virtual queuing line, those may live on. That's always been a hassle for people waiting in line for a ride. Now, if you can, just go have lunch, and we'll text you, and it's, you got 5 minutes till your ride starts, and you come over and get in line, and and then you're on the ride. So we're excited about that. We're selling tickets that are more spread out, so you may reserve a time that you're going to be able to come up. That way we don't have a big rush early in the morning to get up, and so we're going to restrict our number of people per hour that will be coming up the mountain. And then, of course, we're going to have all of the personal protections for all of our employees.
Right. And I know you're going to have some educational social media videos go out, and it's kind of gets people prepared,
Yep,
you know, and
yep.
so they know what to expect. And
Yep. Interesting enough, though, I've seen some reports and stuff that 99.5% of all COVID infections have been caused of contact inside. There's been very few cases that have people contracted in outside venues.
Right.
So it's the restaurants, it's the bars, it's the movie theaters, it's the things that are more interior. So
You're outside.
we're outside. We've got 10 acres. You can spread
Right.
out. You can stay a long ways from people.
So you are co-owner of the Iron Mountain Hot Springs as
Yes,
well.
yep.
And I know, that's a place that has been very successful. And it goes along with the thrills to relaxation.
Yep.
And so what's it going to be like there?
We're going to have to limit the capacity a little bit more there. But again, the truth of the matter is that it's going to be a better experience for our guests, because as we grew, we opened in 2015, and as the popularity grew, we got probably too crowded, and the experience was degrading. So we're going to be selling time slots. You'll book a time, and then you'll have a 2.5 hour time frame, and we'll reduce our capacity substantially by 60-70%. So it would be a lot less people, and then we'll limit the number of people in pools. And so I think people are going to really like it, because you can have your time.
Right.
It's going to be a lot less people there. It's going to be a lot more, a lot better experience.
Yep.
And
it's a positive for the people.
It is a positive for people. And to be honest with you, most people spend about 2 hours
Hours in
there.
there,
How long can you really soak in a hot spring? So it's about 2.5 hours. So that's kind of the window size we've made. And then we're just going to have to do that, because we have to, like every time slot we'll only have 40 people. That's 20 people per locker room that can go through, and we just have to be really cautious. That's our bottleneck, is the locker room.
Right.
And so we want to really limit that, or we're going to also allow people. We're going to be putting cubbies out by the pools, so you don't even have to go in the locker room. You can just bring your stuff and put it in the cubby, and then and you go to another pool, you can put it in a cubby, and that way you don't even have to go in the locker room.
Yeah.
So we've thought of all these things,
Right.
and we think it's really a positive way to go.
And it's tough, because all these things, you almost have to spend more money to make less money, but you got to keep it going.
Yes.
I mean, I
Yep.
feel like that in my business right now too.
Yep.
So Steve, you got people working nonstop right now to get ready for.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yep.
There's they're painting and cleaning and sanitizing and getting ready for the public to come back. So it should be in really great shape when we're ready to open.
And there's always new things happening.
Oh yeah, we've got we got so much land and so many new ideas. I've got new rides planned and new attractions and new things. So every year we'll be doing something new, and probably not this year, but next year hopefully we'll be building something, and that's what I really am passionate about, building new things. And so people can always come back and find something new every year.
So that's where you guys have to stay connected and keep tuning into the park here, because there's always something new. And Steve, thank you for
Well, thank
being
you.
with me today.